So I am joined now by Wasiq Bokhari, who is chairman of Pasqal, which is a company that harnesses quantum computing power for sustainable solutions. And this interview will talk about how we can harness quantum computing to solve some of the world's climate problems. For those of you just joining us, I'm Sarah Repucci. I'm the global head for research programs at Economist Impact. Wasiq, there's been quite a lot of hype about the potential that quantum computing power can have over conventional computing methods when it comes to reducing energy consumption. Maybe you can start by sharing some specific projects that you've been working on that address these areas and use quantum computing in this way.
I would love to. First of all, thank you. And it's great to be here. And if you don't mind, if I can just give a little bit of preamble just to set the stage, and then I'll go from there. So yeah, we are a quantum computing company. We use neutral atoms to do quantum computation. I think the key word here is to focus on the word computation. Why is computation important in general? You know, today we listen from many speakers the problem of inefficiency. I think we need to ask ourselves a question: why is the world we live in so inefficient? We should really think about that question for a second. And if we just go deeper, we'll find out that the reason our world is so inefficient is because our supply chains, our processes, our materials are not designed well. Okay, so then we ask ourselves the question, why are they not designed well? We have so many supercomputers and everything, why are they not designed well? And this will actually lead us to a dirty little secret at the heart of everything, which is that whenever we do computation, especially at large scale for really complicated problems, we don't do exact computations. We do approximations. And it's the approximations that lead to inefficiencies. And then we take these inefficient systems and we scale them. And that creates the problems that we live in. And you can look at it from the materials point of view, the process point of view, everything. It permeates everything. The promise here is by understanding that the classical computation cannot solve certain problems at all exactly. If we understand that, then we understand why there's a promise for quantum computation. Quantum computation is the computation of nature. This is how nature operates, and nature inherently finds the right solution for everything by doing quantum computation. So I just want to talk about the word hype about this. There is an economic hype, but the fundamentals are very strong on this. But I think it really goes back to us understanding why the world is the way it is, because our computations are approximations, really. Now, the beauty of quantum computation here is that we can solve the class of problems that matter the most in terms of optimization, in terms of discovery, that cannot be solved exactly by traditional computing systems. We can solve them really well, and we can solve them exponentially better than traditional computation. So that's the first general preamble that I would make. Now, we have been applying this in specific areas. So I'll give some examples. So I mentioned there's two kinds of problems that stymie our efforts to make the world a more sustainable place. One is the optimization problem, which is how much energy do we use to operate our logistics network? How do I design our processes? How do we design the right kind of materials, and so on and so forth? So in the optimization problems, we've been working with people like EDF, where they have a fleet of power plants. And the problem they're trying to solve is, I have my wind assets, I have my traditional assets, I have my other variable or fixed assets. I want to make sure I have a safe baseline, a stable baseline of power that I can deliver to my customers. How do I switch these different assets on and off, fractionally or completely, so that I deliver that baseline at different times of the day? That's an optimization problem. Now, when you throw this problem to a traditional computational system, then when the number of assets becomes large, let's say above 100 or so, then it becomes very difficult to do because the possibilities are many. But with the quantum computer, one of the inherent advantages of that is that it can simultaneously look at all the possibilities, millions or billions of them. So that is what you're solving with them. So that's one example. Another one would be you take the same thing, you apply it to logistics, where again you have an issue of I have drivers, routes, timings, loads, endpoints. How do I optimize for all of this with traffic, which is varying? Again, we utilize approximations for that. On a quantum computer, you don't have to do that. So if you can map the problem to something that can run on a quantum computer, you can solve it without those approximations. That is a really huge deal. That's a really huge deal. I think the issue that has been happening in the quantum computing space is that for us to produce the machines that are reliable enough, powerful enough to do that, but inherently, that is the promise that we give. Now, the way we've been approaching this is that we say, look, we don't have to give you a 100x improvement right away. I used to work at Amazon, and we had a very large logistics fleet. Obviously, we do a lot of stuff. The company does a lot of stuff. If you can provide a 1% improvement in that, that's a big deal. So let's start with 1%. Where people are struggling to give 1 basis point, we'll give you 100 basis point today. And we'll give you another 1%. And we'll give you another 1%, in the year after and so on and so forth. I think it becomes really transformative in cases like that. So that's another example.
It's fascinating. So Pascal emphasizes energy efficiency in quantum computing. Tell us about for our general audience, tell us about some of the innovations that you've made in that area and how they make improvements.
That's a great question. Actually, let me ask a question to the audience, if you don't mind. What do you think is the power of our brains? How much power do our brains use? Any guess? A toaster is like a kilowatt. A good toaster, right, is a kilowatt. A microwave oven could be like a few kilowatts. Our air conditioners are more than that. How much do you think the brain uses?
Any thoughts?
Any guess? 30 kilowatts. So 30 kilowatts. Any other guesses? Way less. Great. Okay. The brain uses about 20 watts. Okay, 20 watts, less than this light bulb. No, watt is an instantaneous thing, right? It's like instantaneously 20 watts, less than this light bulb. Why is it so low power consuming when even the cheapest, weakest laptop, uses way more than that? Because the architecture is different. It's not a computer. The hardware is different. The quantum computer's hardware is inherently different. So our computers, our most powerful computers, use about 4 kilowatts. A server farm uses megawatts, like 1,000 times more. Now imagine a world in which our computers were 1,000 times more energy efficient or power efficient. You start off just by the advantage of the architecture itself. Then you layer on the question of what if our algorithms are also efficient on top of it? They can solve those problems much faster. Then your overall energy usage, which is power times time, is much, much lower. Now there's a lot of interest and excitement about Gen AI. Everybody talks about it. But again, the secret about Gen AI is it takes a tremendous amount of energy to train those models. That is the input into the system. And on the output of the system, you still don't get exactly the right answers. You get probabilistically right answers, you don't get exactly the right answers. So it is not the solution. So what we need is a different computational paradigm that solves problems exactly, but much more energy efficiently. So that's where we start with. Now we can apply that to how do we design better materials that can go into catalysis for energy reactions or energy savings. How can we design different kinds of processes, energy savings? So the list is literally endless. Just like with high performance computing, once people figured out how to use that tool and the algorithms with it, then it just had this downstream cascading effect on everything. And that is really the promise of quantum computing here as well.
So the key is the architecture. The key is the way that it's designed.
Exactly. It's fundamentally different. And I think that is really the one takeaway I just want to leave. I mean, that insightful thing about the brain using only 20 watts. Just imagine, we are tapping into nature's computer. That's what quantum computation is. It's nature's computer. That's what we have discovered or stumbled onto. Once that happens, it is inherently energy efficient and very powerful.
So you've sold me on the wonders of this, but obviously we're not all seeing this every day in our lives. We're seeing traditional computational power. What do you think are the next steps that need to be taken in order for us to see widespread adoption?
Fantastic question. And this is where I would come back to the 1% improvement, incremental improvement approach that we have. We are saying, look, let's not aim for the 10x today. Let's give you the 1% today. In the field of catalysis, for example, which is critical for chemical reactions, energy conversion, everything, typically the catalyst efficiency does not change at all over decades. If I can just change it by 1%, that is huge reduction in input costs and emissions and efficiency and so forth. That's what we are doing today. So our work with BMW, for example, is on materials discovery. Our work with J&J, Johnson & Johnson, is about materials discovery all along these lines. And that has an effect on the input costs or the inputs in terms of the energy and also in the efficiency of the overall process.
So maybe you can close by telling us a bit about how you've been collaborating with industry in order to push these techniques out into the world.
Fantastic. Thank you. So first of all, we believe that quantum computation is one of three pillars. Quantum computation, traditional high-performance computing, and Gen AI. There are three pillars of computation moving forward. We just announced a partnership with IBM, where basically we'll be working with their traditional high-performance computing to present a single interface to the end customer. You just want to solve your logistics problem. You don't care whether you're using quantum computer or traditional computer. You input your problem. Our software architecture will parse the problem to the right compute structure. We'll solve the problem for you, and you get the benefit. So that's the interface that we are working with. The second is we are going to each and every participant in different industries and saying, hey, what are your most business critical problems? Let us work on that together, on solving it and making it better by 1 to 2% next year. And that's what we're doing. BMW, EDF, as I mentioned, Thales, and so on and so forth, J&J, multiple partners. A vertical focused sector by sector, problem by problem, approach to that. Another very important one is a portfolio management, huge in finance, which is a very intractable problem, but very big financial problem. We're working with Credit Agricole and other institutions on that. So again, sector by sector, vertical by vertical, business problem by business problem.
So if individuals are interested in this technology, what can they do in order to bring it into their everyday lives?
You're asking all the great questions. So what I would suggest is, first of all, I think challenge us. I can only talk about Pasqal. I don't have a right to talk about other quantum computing companies. Challenge Pasqal and bring to us really interesting problems that need to be solved. And let us work on finding a way to solving them. Second, let's just think about quantum computing as not something which is some science fiction and so on. Think about how I can get the 1 to 2% today from it. And the third is learn about it. It is really fascinating field. It's going to completely change everything. I mean, if you just think about the future with quantum computing, traditional HPC, and Gen AI, it's a really interesting triad of capabilities that we are going into the future with. We all need to be conversant in that.
I'll take one question from the audience, which is around the high temperatures that are generated by computers and whether quantum computing also addresses those cooling costs and needs.
It does. So it's actually a very good question. So our particular approach is based on neutral atoms. We actually do not require cryogenics for it. So IBM's approach and other great companies, these are all different approaches. Some of these approaches require cryogenics or to be in a superconducting state. Ours does not. So inherently, again, our system is much more energy efficient. But in terms of the design of systems which will require supercooling in the future, we can help, because we can help in the materials discovery, we can help in the process discovery, and so on. So there's two ways in which we can address that.
Great. Well, Wasiq, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
this
so much.
conversation, really fascinating. And I will invite Satish up to the...
And my colleagues are going to be at our booth at Pasqal, so please come by, ask questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you.